Hello everyone, it's Aeon from Low Expectation, and today, let's talk about that Shadow Priest. The Shadow Priest has had a complete rework in the Shadowlands. The old mechanic of fighting with your insanity bar to stay in void form is gone. The new mechanic works a lot like the old Shadow Orb system and Devouring Plague. Some of you might remember that. Basically, build your insanity and spend it on Devouring Plague. It's a simple concept, but it does get a lot meatier. So now, your Insanity Bar is a resource. Build it with Mind Blast, Mind Flay, Shadowy Pain, and Vampiric Touch. Once gained, spend it on Devouring Plague to deal massive single target damage. Devouring Plague might just be a single target spell, but it does have AoE components. Let's move on to that. And with this rework came a change to shadowy apparitions. Before, it would proc on your damage over time's critical strikes. However, now a spirit will be sent out to all targets affected by your Vampiric Touch whenever you cast Mind Blast, Void Bolt, or Devouring Plague. No crit is required. If any of those spells' initial damage does crit, it will send out 2 spirits instead of 1. So Void Form is now your main cooldown. Yes, you heard it right. Shadow Priests now have a cooldown, and it's pretty damn good. To enter Void Form, you'll need to cast Void Eruption, and once you do, you will deal damage to a target and anything within 10 yards. Once in this form, Void Bolt replaces the cooldown's Keybind, and Mind Blast now has 2 charges. Couple this with the previous change to shadowy apparitions, and you'll see that Shadow Priests get pretty damn crazy on multiple targets. There is some very specific rotational mid-maxing you can do as a Shadow Priest. However, it has changed a few times over the course of the beta, so for now we won't deep dive into that. If you are interested in that, the Priest Discord and Wowhead guides cover that extensively. I suggest you go and have a quick look. The strengths of a Shadow Priest lies in its multi-target prowess. You are able to deal incredible split target damage, making council fights your dream. However, unlike previous expansions, your single target damage does not suffer too much, meaning you're able to do both to a pretty high standard. You also bring Power Infusion. Yep, you heard me right, PI is back. You're able to place this on yourself or an ally for 20% haste buff for 20 seconds. Also, your defensive is huge. It's a whopping 75% reduction on a 1.5 minute cooldown. This is great for those mechanics that other classes might just die to. Next is Vampiric Embrace. This allows a portion of the damage you deal to heal your allies. When used correctly, this can save lives. Talking of saving lives, you can also grip allies to safety, or to their deaths. The choice is yours. Also, priests still bring that 5% flat stamina increase via their Fortitude buff. To top it all off, you're able to remove debuffs from your allies and buffs from your enemies. You are the only DPS class in the game that can remove magic debuffs from your allies via your master spell. There are, however, a few setbacks to the Shadow Priests. One weakness is your mobility. You still do not have any baseline mobility spells and will need to talent into it if you would like one. Even then, it still pales in comparison to other classes. Next is your Interrupt. It is on a 45-second cooldown baseline. Keep this in mind when forming a group for Mythic Plus, as interrupting is more important than ever. And lastly is your Burst AoE damage. Baseline Shadow Priest Burst AoE is lacking. It's worth mentioning that there is a talent you can go into which is an AoE Insanity Spender, but it's still a lot weaker than most classes. With that out of the way, let's talk Covenant abilities. If you join the Kyrians, you'll gain Boon of the Ascended. Basically, you turn Super Saiyan for a few seconds and your Mind Flay gets replaced by an instant cast ball of energy and you gain an AoE spammable. Both these spells give you stacks, and at the end of the form you explode for damage equal to the amount of stacks you've gained. Honestly, this one doesn't suit the Shadow Priest too well. To get the most out of the explosion, you'll have to go melee. Next is Necrolord. This gives you a 1 minute cooldown with no cast time. You send a bolt of unholy energy at the target that explodes, dealing a burst of damage to all targets and placing a dot on them. If an ally hits that target, they are healed. This has an internal cooldown, so it doesn't get too crazy. Next is Night Fae. This ability will summon 3 spirits to your side. Each spirit will follow a specific spell. Shadowy Pain will place the Wrathful Fae on a target, giving you insanity every time you hit that target. Next is the Guardian Fae. This will follow your powered shield and give them a 10% damage reduction. Lastly is the Benevolent Fae. This follows your Shadow Mend and recovers the primary offensive cooldown of that target twice as fast for the duration. Now, it is worth noting they will default to you. As long as you do not cast Shadow Mend or Powered Shield, they will stay on you, making this a little bit easier to manage at first. And lastly is Venthir. You should think of this as a 45-second cooldown very powerful Mind Blast. It blasts the target for shadow damage and causes their next damaging action to heal for a portion of it instead of dealing damage. This will also grant you some insanity. And that's pretty much it. So the closing thoughts on the Shadow Priest is it's extremely fun to play, simple, but has those moments where you feel like a god. Trust me, go to some dummies, put Vampiric Touch on a few targets and go to town. Honestly, Blizzard have put the foot in the right direction with the Shadow Priest, and they're way more flexible than they were before. And I'm not surprised if you see them entering more Mythic Plus and cutting edge raiding. That is all from me. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, and until next time guys, have a good one.